Today, we embark on a quest with the heroes of Stoicism, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, under the guidance of their deep philosophies. In their quest for inner peace and resilience, the Stoics teach us the art of accepting the things we cannot change, finding strength in adversity, and developing a mindset that overcomes life's challenges. Seneca's views on facing challenges, courage, and embracing discomfort move us forward. Epictetus becomes our guiding light with his emphasis on the power of choice and endurance. Meanwhile, the Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius encourages us to live a virtuous and careful life. As you explore these gems of philosophy, remember that Stoicism is not just a set of ideas, but a practical guide to overcoming the complexities of our age. Join me as I reveal the secrets of a resilient and purposeful existence inspired by the timeless wisdom of the Stoic masters. A human lifespan is approximately 70 years. When we take into account the physical or mental difficulties that every person has experienced or will experience, life can get pretty difficult and complicated. On top of all this, let's ask this question: how should a life be lived? To answer this question, let's go back 2,300 years to the time of ancient Greece. One day, a rich Cypriot named Zenon was traveling with his ship and the assets on board. But that day the sea is not calm at all, and eventually Zenon's ship sinks. The assets of this rich merchant are also buried deep in the sea. While Zenon was a wealthy man, he became poor in a short time. This dateless event pushes Zenon to think and research about life. He reads certain books, chats with some philosophers around him, and finally decides to develop his own philosophical teachings. Stoicism is felt in this video. He puts forward the philosophy of Stoicism and spreads this teaching around. This philosophy is not only limited to ancient Greece, but also spread to ancient Rome and began to attract interest from all kinds of people. In addition to philosophers such as Epictetus and Seneca, Emperor Marcus Aurelius also showed great interest in this philosophy. I will talk about Ephesus and the ideas of philosophers who will be considered representatives of this philosophy on the subject. The most basic principle of the Stoic is this: a person should live in accordance with nature. They choose this statement as the starting point in their philosophy. First of all, we can think of the concept we call nature as a universal cosmic nature term, rather than just thinking of it as wild nature or human nature. Considering that the Stoics have a theistic understanding of God, that is, they believe that God is everywhere in nature. As a result, we conclude that nature has a supreme and sublime value. In the thoughts of Stoic philosophers about nature, there are expressions of a self-sufficient, creative mind that puts everything in order in the universe, and from these expressions we can understand that nature corresponds to the concept of God. Since we put nature, which is the highest value, and living in accordance with nature, as the basis of this philosophy, we take this foundation as the starting point. Let's choose. Let's continue. When we focus on humans and think about the place of humans in nature, it becomes clear that we have an ability that makes us different and special from other living things, that is, mind. This mind is an ability that nature has given us, and using the mind will be something nature expects from us. Thus, living in accordance with nature, which is the basis of Stoicism, will also lead us to live in accordance with reason. Since we have reached the stage of reason, let's do a thought experiment. Let there be two kinds of worlds. Let the people living in one of these worlds exhibit all the characteristics that we can describe as good. For example, let them be fair and knowledgeable, engage in rational work, not commit crimes, and let's call this world the virtuous world. Let the other world be the opposite. Crimes were committed. Let's call this world a chaotic world, the world without virtue. Which of these worlds is worth living in? For most people, but especially for our subject, a Stoic person, it would be wiser to choose a virtuous world. The basis of this philosophy dictates living in accordance with nature. Since nature, which is the highest value among the Stoics, includes concepts such as creative, intelligent, orderly and good, a Stoic person puts the goal of reaching a virtuous world and being a virtuous person at the center of his life. The philosophy of Stoicism, which we started with the basis of living in accordance with nature, moves from nature to reason and from there to living in accordance with virtue. The concept of virtue is of great importance in Stoicism. So let's examine in detail in the next section. How can we define virtue? In the Stoic view, the definition of virtue is explained with 4 basic items. These are wisdom, moderation, honesty, and courage. These concepts are all related to each other, and the person who meets all 4 items is considered a person of virtue. From a moral perspective, Stoicism sees virtue as the only good concept. Vice is the only bad thing. Every decision or action a person takes regarding his life, it must be evaluated in terms of virtue or non-virtue. If you notice, this classification offered by the Stoics can leave some concepts in a blurry place. Other concepts about life. For example, how do we classify things like wealth, power, or fame? The Stoics call all concepts other than virtue and vice indifferent. Take wealth, for example. While wealth can help virtue when appropriate, it can also increase vice when appropriate. Since all concepts other than virtue or non-virtue can be included in these 2 groups depending on their conditions, a definitive classification cannot be made. Passes unregistered. Speaking of the concept of indifference, let's talk about the concept of remaining indifferent, which also has an important place in Stoicism. First of all, if we expand on the term indifference, we can define it as not being absorbed in an event, not paying attention to it. Being indifferent, especially in the face of pain, has an important place in Stoicism. To understand better, let's first examine the Stoics' perspective on optimism. Exaggerated optimism, more popularly known as toxic optimism, is a practice that Stoicism rejects. This philosophy even states that we should also take pessimistic thoughts into account and that this is very useful. For example, Marcus Aurelius applies a technique we can call negative visualization every morning. We can summarize this method as if everything goes wrong. Aurelius poses scenarios to himself such as, what if ignorant and rude people come my way today, my army loses the war, or my empire collapses? After all these negative possibilities, this is what he expects from himself. If all these scenarios come true, can I still continue my virtue and goodness with my head held high, without rebelling or losing my mind? Being able to continue without being depressed and without losing himself in the face of what he has lost is a level that Aurelius tries to reach. The method he uses to do this is to take seriously the possibility that disasters may happen to him. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Think often about how quickly everything, what was and what will be, passes away." At the same time, Seneca offers a solution very similar to this method to people who consult him with their problems. He tells a person who expresses anxiety about losing what he has to imagine the worst possible scenario and convince himself that it will happen. Despite all this, he tries to show the person that no matter how bad things happen to him, he has the ability to fix them. If we sum up the practice of negative visualization, the person prepares himself for the worst possible scenario. This gives the person the ability to tolerate the worst-case scenario. If such a scenario occurs, we can summarize it as follows: the person will survive this event with minimal damage. However, in such a situation, the way a person interprets the unfortunate events that happen to him also changes. If we pay attention to Stoicism's attitudes towards misfortune and the practice of negative visualization, it becomes clear that the distinction between what is under human control and what is not is important in this philosophy. It is necessary to stay away from them as much as possible. To exemplify negative emotions, we can show emotions such as fear, jealousy, and especially anger. In response to Stoicism's desire to distance people from these negative emotions, the following argument can be presented. Negative emotions are things that are in human nature and can even be beneficial when necessary. For example, if a warrior is angry, it can make him more aggressive and daring. A person living in primitive times could protect himself against threats from his environment by feeling fear. It is not possible to reduce negative emotions to zero and remove them from human nature. These emotions often arise out of our control, like a reflex. For Stoicism, if these emotions have become something that every person can control, the person should control them as soon as possible and not allow that emotion to increase. The Stoics' argument on this issue is this: negative emotions cover the mind. Because of the importance this philosophy attaches to living in accordance with reason, emotional excesses overriding reason is a situation they avoid. As long as the mind is free from emotional excesses, it will work correctly. When we rethink the two examples I gave in this context, a warrior's instant anger can be considered normal. But the longer this anger continues, the more that warrior's mind will close down. Because fighting is something that uses the mind and is tactical in nature. Having a calm mind will enable the warrior to make better decisions. Moving on to the example of fear, it is normal for a person to feel fear reflexively in times of danger. But the longer this fear lasts, the person's mind will shut down and become stressed, and it will become difficult to even do what he needs to do at that moment, for example, run away and hide in a safe place. Stoicism clearly reveals its attitude towards negative emotions. So, what is the perspective of Stoicism on emotions such as love, affetti, on or happiness, which we can call positive emotions? First of all, the attitude of Stoicism towards positive emotions is more moderate compared to negative emotions. There is no problem in experiencing these emotions up to a certain limit. But when these emotions take the form of desire, passion, it will be a Stoic practice to avoid those emotions. No matter how good an emotion is, when it exceeds a certain level, it will still prevent the mind from functioning properly. This situation would contradict the basis of Stoicism. We examined the relationship between the concepts of control and emotion in Stoicism. Let's examine the situations that are out of control in the next section. Let's think of a religious person. This person may interpret an event, especially a painful event, that he or she has difficulty making sense of, with the concept of fate. What happens to him is part of a plan established by God, and he knows that as a servant he has to submit to the good or bad things that come from God. Apart from this, he thinks that this world is a test, the pain he suffers serves as a divine test, and if he passes this test, he will receive a reward in the afterlife. This submission between God and the servant seen in my thesis is, in a sense, also present in Stoicism. We can say that although it is a belief in the afterlife, it has fatalistic aspects and is similar to theism in this respect. Whatever happens to you, it has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. The threads of creation and the fate of those who will live weave them together. Living in accordance with nature, which is the basis of this philosophy, means bowing to nature and surrendering to it. We can see this surrender at the basis of the negative visualization or indifference practices I mentioned. If a person cannot accept the disasters that have happened to him, a state of rebellion and denial may arise. It should be noted here that the feeling of rebellion is also considered a negative emotion. That is, it has a structure that covers the mind. The following sentences appear in Epictetus' discourses regarding the concepts of Stoicism, fate and submission. Living in accordance with nature means living life like a journey. Like this. You can determine the ship's captain, crew, travel day, and time. Then a storm breaks out. At that moment, your responsibility is to protect what belongs only to you. The rest is the captain's duty. What can you do if the ship sinks? Just do what you can, without fear, without screaming, without blaming God, and knowing that everything that exists will surely disappear one day. Since you are not an immortal being, but a tiny human, you must be ready when your turn comes, just like any other hour of the day. And you must end when you must end. Dear viewers, as you complete this journey, inspired by the profound teachings of Zenon, Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, I hope you have found inspiration and guidance for a more meaningful and resilient life. These ancient philosophies have stood the test of time and offered invaluable information on how to face challenges, embrace change, and develop inner strength. If you enjoyed the wisdom shared, I recommend subscribing to our channel for richer content based on the timeless principles of Stoicism. By subscribing, you join a community dedicated to personal growth, resilience, and the pursuit of virtue. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Your support not only strengthens our mission, but also helps spread these transformative teachings to a wider audience. Let's continue this journey together towards a more stoic and purposeful existence. Thank you for being part of our community. Subscribe, like, and let's continue to grow together on this path of wisdom and self-discovery. Goodbye with health and love.